Let them think I didn't hear the call or don't know how to use the phone. Another old man quirked to laugh at. The cab pulls up. I get in the back seat and give my address. The driver, a young guy with an earpiece in his ear, doesn't even turn around. Just nods and drives off. I look out the window at the houses and trees floating by. Some of the windows have lights on, silhouettes of people, families gathered together. I wonder if there are lonely old men like me among them, as unwanted, forgotten, ridiculity their own children. The phone vibrates again. This time it's from Parker. I reject it. Then another one from Lilith. I'm rejecting that too. Let them worry for a while. Although probably just shrug their shoulders and go on having fun. My absence will hardly spoil the festivities. The cab pulls up in front of my house. I pay, get out. The house greets me with dark windows and silence. I open the door, go. Inside without turning on the light. In the dark, I find my way to the chair in the living room and sit down. This is it. Willow's birthday. A family celebration. Miriam's gold watch, which will now likely gather dust in a dresser drawer or worse end up in a thrift store. And me, who is ridiculed for trying to be helpful. You look like a gardener. As if there's any shame in that. As if being a gardener is less worthy of respect than any other job. I sit in the dark listening to the ticking off the clocks. They all tell different times, but it doesn't matter anymore for 'em. It's as if time stopped the moment I heard my own children laughing behind. Me. The phone vibrates for the third time. A message from Tamsin Eustace. Everyone is worried. Are you okay? Please answer. At least someone noticed my absence. I dial a short reply. I'm home. I'm fine. Apologize to Willow for me. A second and the reply comes. What happened? Why did you leave? What am I supposed to say? That I couldn't tackle the ridicule? That I felt humiliated and unwanted? That I finally realized how little I mean to my family? Not feeling well, I wrote back. Didn't want to. Ruined party. I'm fine. Should I call you later? Tamsin asks. No need. I'm going to bed early. Say hi to everyone. That's the end of the correspondence. I put my phone away and close my eyes. The picture comes back to my mind. Me among the bushes with flowers. And scissors, laughing faces around me, scornful looks. You look like a gardener. Something fractures inside. Something I was still trying to hold on to. The hope that my family still respects me, appreciates me, loves me. Now I see the truth. To them, I'm just a burden, an old man living out his days, an object of ridicule. In the darkness of the room, I make a decision. It's time to make a change. It's time to show them that director isn't completely out of his mind and can teach them one last lesson. Tomorrow I'll call my old friend Lawyer Frank Witz. We have some estate and probate matters to discuss. I wake up with the first rays of sunlight coming through the loose curtains. I'd spent the night in the chair, unable to find the strength to go up to the bedroom. My body was stiff, my knee aching more than usual, but my mind was surprisingly clear. Yesterday evening was before his eyes in every detail. Thepperty, the gold watch in Willow's purse, Parker's dismissive glances, direct slaughter. You look like a gardener. Those words burned something inside me, leaving behind not pain, but a strange desolation that slowly fills with cold determination. I rise from my chair, wrinkling my aching joints, and walk to the kitchen. I make tea, making toast with the usual motions. A lonely old man's breakfast. But today, I don't feel lonely or pathetic. Today I feel like Principal Bekraftoft, a man who has led the school for 20 years and made difficult decisions. The phone on my desk shows 3 missed calls from Lilith and 2 from Parker. Not a single message. They've probably figured I've taken offense as usual and will cool off soon. That I could call in a week, check in my health, and everything would be back to normal. Poor old Dad. So touchy, so predictable. Not this time. After breakfast, I go into the study and pull out a shabby notebook from my desk drawer. In it are the phone numbers of people I kept in touch with after I retired. Many of them are no longer alive. Many have changed numbers, but Frank Witters, my longtime acquaintance and the lawyer who handled the paperwork for my children's homes, should better. I dial the number and listen to the long beeps. My heart beats faster than usual. Finally, a familiar voice. Frank Witters speaking. "Frank, it's Eustace Boft," I said, trying to sound confident. "Eustace?" Surprise in my voice. "It's been a long time." "How are you, old boy?" "Not bad considering the circumstances," I reply. "Frank, I need your professional help. It's about real estate and probate." "Of course. I'm always happy to help." I hear a note of concern in his voice. Is something wrong? "Nothing urgent," I reassure him. "I just want to make some changes." "When can we meet?" "Let me think about it." I heard rustling of the pages of the day planner. "How about tomorrow, 11 o'clock in the morning? I have a window between meetings." "Perfect. I agree. Is your office still there?" "Yes. Same address on the High Street." "Eustace, are you sorry everything's all right?" "Everything's perfectly all right, Frank," I reply with a new firmness in my voice. It's just time to get things in order. We say goodbye and I hang up. The first step has been taken. Now I have to prepare for the meeting, gather all the necessary documents. I spend the rest off day sorting through papers in my office. I pull out real estate files, account statements, insurance policies, the will Miriam made when she was still alive. I arrange them all neatly on the desk, sorting them, making notes. I have even properties. Miriam and I have the house I live in now, Parker and Tamsin's house, which I bought for them as a wedding present 25 years ago. Lilith and Derek's house that I bought 17 years ago, and 4 other smaller houses that I rent out that provide me with a steady income. All the paperwork is in order. Each property has a certificate of title in my name. All taxes paid. All insurance valid. The children's homes are also my property. Then, many years ago, I decided not to reissue them to the children at once, but first, to see how they would cope with the upkeep. I planned to pass them on through my will. That decision seems remarkably far-sighted to me. Now in the evening, the phone rings again. Parker. This time I don't answer it. Then Lilith. I ignore either. Let them get used to the idea that old Dad won't always be available when called. The night passes restlessly. I toss and turn in bed, thinking about my upcoming meeting with Frank and the kids' reactions. I have no doubt they will be furious that they'll accuse me of being cruel, of being vindictive, maybe even of senile dementia. But I've already made my decision, and I'm prepared for the consequences. In the morning, I'm going to be extra careful. My best suit, the same one I wore to Willow's birthday party, seems like a symbol of my humiliation. Now I choose another, Fegre pinstripe one I'd worn to the school's Board of Trustees meetings, principal suit. I hail a cab and drive to Frank's office located in an old building on the High Street. On the way, I look out the window at the familiar streets of Hastings and think about how much my life has changed in the last 3 years. Miriam is gone. The children are estranged. Their grandchildren have grown up and forgotten my grandfather's existence. All that's left are memories and real estate. Well, at least I can still do something with the real estate. Frank Witters' office hadn't changed since the last time I'd been here, 5 years ago when Miriam and I had updated the will. The same dark wood paneling on the walls, the same leather chairs, the same rows of legal volumes on the shelves. Frank himself hadn't changed much either. Still the same full red-faced man with Aniette gray beard. Just a few more wrinkles. Eustace. He rises from the table to shake my hand. Good to see you. How's Miriam? Miriam died 3 years ago, Frank, I answer, sitting down in the chair across from him. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. He looks genuinely saddened. My condolences. Helen and I always admired your couple. Thank you. I nod. How's Helen? Good. Still working at Thilibri, though she's long overdue for retirement, he said, smiling. Can't part with her books. We exchange a few more sentences about health, the weather, mutual acquaintances. Then Frank gets down to business. So, Eustace, you mentioned real estate and a will. What exactly would you like to discuss? I take a folder of documents out of my briefcase and put it on the table. You want to sell 2 houses, I say bluntly. The one where my son Parker and his family live, and the one where my daughter Lilith and her family live. Frank raises his eyebrows in surprise. They're moving out, finding another place to live. No, I shake my head. They'd know about my decision. Frank leans back in his chair, studying me with his gaze. Eustace, it's not for me to tell you, but this is an unusual move. These houses have been their family nest for years. I own the houses, I remind him. I didn't ask them for rent, didn't demand anything in return, just respect. And I didn't even get that. Did something happen between you two? Frank asks cautiously. I don't want to go into fairy tales of last night's humiliation, so I answer briefly. Let's just say we had a disagreement about family values. Frank nods, not insisting on fairy tales. He's always been a tactful man. Legally, you have every right to sell these houses, he says. They're registered in your name. There are no encumbrances, but you realize that your children will be upset. I do. I agree. And I'm ready for that. Good. He makes a note in his notebook. What other changes would you like to make? I want to rewrite my will. I continue. I used Toplin to leave the house to the kids. Now I'm thinking differently. We spend the next hour discussing the details of the new will. I decide to leave my main house and 2 of the 4 rented houses to the local hospice where Miriam spent her last weeks. Another house to St. George's School to establish a scholarship in my name and only one. The smallest house to the children in equal shares. Are you sure? Frank asks, writing down my wishes. It's a pretty radical change. I'm absolutely sure, I nod. When can we start the sale process? If you have all the paperwork today, he says, but first you'll have to notify the tenants, your children. That is, of your decision. The law requires advance notice. I understand, I say. Get the paperwork ready and I'll sign it. Frank makes a few calls, gives instructions to his secretary. Half an hour later, we have the notices of sale for Parker and Lilith on our desk. Standard forms, dry legal language, no motion. Exactly what we need. By law, they'll have 30 days. To vacate the premises or negotiate a lease with the new owner, Frank explained. But I'd recommend giving them more time. It's your kids we're talking about. 60 days, I decide after a pause. That should be enough. Frank nods and amends the documents. I sign them one by one, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders with each signature. What's next? I ask when all the papers are signed. We'll send the notices by registered mail, Frank replies. At the same time, we'll start looking for buyers. Given the location of the houses and the state of the market, I think we'll find them pretty quickly. Good. I nod. One more thing, Frank. If my children contact you directly, tell them that you're acting on my instructions and that they have to deal with me. Of course, he looks at me with slight concern. Eustace, are you sure you thought this through? This is a big step. Believe me, Frank, I've been thinking about it all night, I reply, and all the way here and all 3 years since Miriam died. It's just that something finally snapped yesterday. He doesn't ask what it was. He just nods and shakes my hand. The Neil. Contact you as soon as I hear from you, and we'll have the will drawn up within the week. I leave Frank's office with a sense of accomplishment, not to the kids, to myself. For the first time in a long time, I made a decision not as a father thinking of the children's welfare, but as a man thinking of his own dignity. I return home, and the first thing I do is turn off my home phone, put my cell phone on mute. I don't want to hear the kids calling when they get notifications. I don't want to explain, make excuses, hear accusations. Everything I want to say is in FISA legal documents. The next 3 days pass in a strange calm. I do things I've been putting off for a long time. I sort through the books in the study, try to tidy up the garden, even start reading the new detective novel I bought when Miriam was alive. I don't check my phone. I don't turn on my computer. Total information isolation. On the 4th day, the doorbell rings. It's insistent long. I go to the window and see Parker's car parked outside the house. He's standing on the porch, pressing the bell button again and again. His face is contorted with anger. I move away from the window and sit down in the chair. The ringing continues for another 5 minutes. Then I hear a knock on the window. Parker's going around the house trying to look inside. Finally, the sounds fade. I peek out cautiously. The car is gone. He's gone. That same evening, another visit. Lilith, this time she doesn't call, but knocks on the door, shouting my name. Daddy, I know you're home. Open up right now. Her voice breaks into a scream. I sit still until she leaves. The next morning, I turn on my cell phone and see 37 missed calls and 23 messages from Parker, from Lilith, even from Tamsin and Derek. I start reading the messages from the earliest to the latest. Parker, Dad, what's going on? We got some weird letter from a lawyer. Call me back right away. Lilith, Dad, is there some kind of mistake? Why did we get a notice that the house is for sale? Call me, Parker. I called Frank Witters. He said he was acting on your instructions. Is that true? Are you serious about selling our house? Lilith, Dad, if you're offended about Willow's birthday, let's talk. This is some kind of misunderstanding. The messages get more desperate, then angry, then threatening. Parker, if you don't answer, I'm calling the police in case something happened to you. Lilith, you can't do this to us. We have a family, children. Where are we going to live? Parker, I consulted Anna Thurlewire. We can challenge your decision if we can prove you're incapacitated. Lilith, Mom would never approve of such an act. You're betraying her memory. The last messages are from this morning already. Parker, Dad. Let's talk like adults. I'll be there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Please open the door. Lilith, we're all coming to your place at 2 o'clock. We need to discuss this. I look at that clock. It's almost 2. That means the whole family will be here soon demanding an explanation. Well, I'm ready. During these days of silence and solitude, I've made up Mimond. At exactly 2 o'clock, 2 cars, Parker's and Lilith's, appear in the driveway. Everyone gets out. Parker, Tamsin, Lilith, Derek, even Willow. Only Orson and Marion aren't there, apparently. Deciding that this is adult conversation. They go up on the porch and a new round of ringing and knocking on the door begins. This time I decidero open it. I put on my jacket, adjust my tie, square my shoulders. Principal Befra is ready for an unpleasant conversation. I open the door and see a furious Parker standing in front of me, ready to keep pounding his fist, followed by the rest of the family with expressions ranging from anger to fear in their faces. Finally, Parker blurts out, "We were thinking of calling the police." "That wasn't necessary," I reply calmly. "I'm perfectly fine." "Then what's this all about?" "He's waving a letter from Frank. Why did you decide to sell our houses?" "Come in," I say, stepping aside. If you want to talk, let's do it in a civilized manner. They walk into the living room, seated Parker and Lilith on the couch, their spouses in the chairs, Willow by the window. I remain standing, leaning on the cane I'd picked up specifically for this conversation, not because I need it, but because it gives me a certain authority. So I'm listening, I say, looking at them in turn. Are you listening? Parker is almost shouting. We're the ones who should be listening. What's going on, Dad? Why did you decide to sell our houses? Because they're mine, I answer simply. And I decided. It was time to sell them, but we live there, Lilith enters. They're our family homes. Willow grew up in that house. Technically, they're my houses you live in, I correct her. For free, I might add. All these years you gave them to us. Parker jumps up off the couch. They were gifts. I let you live in them. I shake my head, but I never transferred ownership. That's different, Parker. You, as a real estate appraiser, should understand that. This is despicable. Lilith screams. You always said these houses would be ours. In your will, I clarify. Which? I have the right to change, and I changed it. There is silence. They look at me as if they're seeing me for the first time. Maybe they are. Maybe it's the first time they see not just an old dad, but a man capable of making tough decisions. Why? Tamsin asks quietly. What did Wado? It's not what you did, I answer, turning my gaze to her. It's what you didn't do. You didn't show respect. Didn't appreciate what you have, what you thought you owed. Is this about Willow's birthday? Derek shakes his head. Because of that stupid joke about the gardener? Really, Eustace? No, not because of the joke, I answer calmly. Because of the laughter that followed it. Because of the contempt in your eyes. Because no one even noticed when I left. We did notice, Lilith protests. We called you. An hour later, I remind her when they found I wasn't sitting in my corner. Dad, you can't punish us for one stupid joke. Parker spreads his hands. It's not fair. It would have been fair to charge you rent all these years, I reply. But I didn't. I thought family relationships were more important than money. Turns out I was wrong, Grandpa, Willow said, who had been silent at the window all this time. I wanted to thank you for the watch. It's beautiful. Her voice sounds insincere. She's clearly trying to soften me up at her parents' instigation. It's too late and too obvious. You're welcome, I replied dryly. I hope you wear them with more dignity than your family shows. You can't do this, Tos. Parker explodes again. We are your children. I say firmly, and I'm doing it. The paperwork's in. The process is underway. You have 60 days to find a new place to live. 60 days? Lilith looks like she's been punched. That's impossible. Where are we going to find the money for a new house in that amount of time? You're adults, working people. I shrug. You'll figure something out. You can rent an apartment. For starters. And what about your will? Parker asks, clearly trying to come at it from the other side. Did you change it too? Yes, I answer honestly. Most of my property will go to the hospice where your mother was treated and St. George's School. I leave you one small house which you can sell and divide the money. You can't disinherit us. Parker clenches his fists. It's against the law. Quite legal. I object. I consulted a lawyer. In England, there is no compulsory share of inheritance for children as in some other countries. I can bequeath my property to anyone I want. They look at me with disbelief, shock, rage. None of them expected this turn of events. They were used to seeing me as a soft, compliant father who always indulged their desires, always put their interest before his own. Now they see a different man. If that's all you wanted to discuss, I said, taking a step toward the door, I'd ask you to leave. I have a lot to do today. Things to do? Derek snorts. What business could there possibly be for? He doesn't finish the sentence, but everyone realizes what he meant to say. An old man like you. It's that attitude that led to today's situation. I have a meeting with the director of the hospice, I answer coldly. We're going over the details of the real estate transfer, then with a lawyer about the will, then with the realtor who will be selling your homes. So as you can see, I'm very busy. You're going to regret this. Parker stands up, looking at me with open hostility. We'll prove that you're incompetent, that you don't know what you're doing. You can try. I shrug. But keep in mind that Frank Witters, my lawyer, has already prepared documents proving my legal capacity. Medical reports, psychiatrist evaluation, everything you need. So don't waste your time and money. It's been 3 months since the day I made the decision to change my life. 3 months filled with legal procedures, meetings with realtors, bankers, notaries. 3 months that turned everything I had been used to for years upside down. Today I sit on the terrace of my new house in Winchell, a small coastal village 20 kilometers from Hastings. The sea murmurs close by. The salty wind ruffles the branches of the apple trees in the small orchard. My new house is much smaller than before. Just 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a study. But there are no empty rooms that remind me of children and grandchildren gone. No heavy curtains that Miriam had chosen. No old clocks counting down the hours in a different rhythm. On the desk in front of me is a folder with the paperwork to finalize the sale of the Parker and Lilith homes. It's done. The money's been deposited into my account. Frank Witters did an excellent job despite my children's attempts to obstruct the transaction. They tried. Oh, they tried. First the threats to sue to prove I was incompetent to contest the sale. Then please endless phone calls, letters of apology, even a bouquet of flowers from Lilith with a card that said, "We're sorry, Dad." Then the threats. Again, more specific, involving lawyers trying to find loopholes in the law. Nothing worked. Frank had everything covered. I had a medical exam that confirmed my full legal capacity. I submitted all the necessary documents proving my sole ownership of the houses. I met the 60-day deadline for evicting tenants, even extending it for another 2 weeks at Tamsin's request. And their result is 2 sold houses, a good sum in my bank account, and a new life in Acquiet coastal village where no one knows me as old Mr. Bayruftoft or former headmaster. Here I am simply Eustace, a new resident with an interesting London accent and a habit of getting up early for walks along the coast. My cottage stands on the edge of the village, a 5-minute walk from the sea. It is small but sturdy with a tiled roof and whitewashed walls. The previous owners, an elderly couple who moved to Australia with their children, left the garden in good condition. There are apple trees, pears, plums, and many flowers. Tending them has suddenly become my new hobby. You look like a gardener. Those words thrown by Derek in mockery now took on a new meaning. I have indeed become a gardener. Every morning I worked in the garden, pruning bushes, weeding beds, watering flowers. My hands, used to the pen of the school principal, are now covered with calluses from gardening tools. And you know what? I like it. I sip tea from a mug and look at the bay, glistening in the morning sun. Fishing boats returning from a night of fishing. Seagulls circling above them, hoping for a meal. A quiet, measured life I never dreamed of in Hastings. Of course, there were difficult moments. The first weeks in my new home, I would wake up in the middle of the night, not realizing where I was, looking for familiar objects in unfamiliar rooms, listening to the sounds of the new house, so different from the creaks and rustles of the old one. There were days when I doubted my decision, when the longing for a familiar life became almost unbearable. When I remembered the faces of the children, the day I announced the house sale to them, shock, disbelief, despair. At times like that, I pulled out a box of Miriam's pictures, the only thing I had taken from my old belongings, and spoke to her as if she could hear me. "You're doing the right thing, Eustace," I'd say, imagining her response. "You can let anyone, even your own children, treat you without respect." Gradually, the doubts receded. I began to settle into Winchelsea, getting to know my neighbors, exploring the neighborhood. It turned out that there were quite a few people like me, older people who had started a new life away from the big cities and family dramas. My first acquaintance was Eleanor Pute, a 72-year-old widow who lived next door. She knocked on my door on the third day after I moved in, brought me a homemade cake, and invited me to tea. Since then, we have met often, walking along the shore, discussing books, summetamesheving dinner together. No romantic overtones, just friendly companionship twine two lonely people. Through Eleanor, I've gotten to know the other villagers. Most of them are retirees like us with similar stories behind them. Geoffrey Hobbs, a former banker who fled an overbearing daughter in London. Margaret Thatcher, the namesake of the former Prime Minister, as she always clarifies, a once famous artist who broke up with her family over her sister's inheritance. William and Dorothy Hammond, a married couple whose children traveled the world, forgetting their parents. All of them, like me, have found in Winchelsea a new beginning, a new family, so to speak. The amazing thing is that a month after I moved in, I joined the local gardening club. Ironically, the man who was ridiculed for looking like a gardener has now truly become one. We meet every Wednesday at the community center, exchange seedlings, discuss pest control methods, and plan joint landscaping projects for the village. My roses. Yes, I've started growing roses again, like Miriam, received high praise at the last club meeting. Dorothy Hammond even asked for cuttings for her garden. "You clearly have talent, Eustace," she said. "It's like you've been doing this all your life." If only she knew how far I'd been from gardening most of my life. A school principal, a strict father, a careful homeowner, anything but a man digging in the ground. But now I enjoy this simple physical labor. From the results that can be seen immediately: a blossoming bush, ripe apples, a well-tended lawn. It true not to think about the children, but the news gets to me. Tamsin's niece, Ashley, lives in Winchelsea, whom we ran into by chance at the local bakery. She recognized me from the photos and spoke first. There were no accusations or recriminations, just polite conversation about the weather, the village, my new home, and then, as if by the way, she mentioned Parker and Tamsin. "They're renting an apartment in Hastings now," she said. "Not as big as their old house, 3 rooms on the 5th floor, no elevator. Parker has a hard time getting up after a day's work." I nodded, showing no emotion. I didn't ask Ashley about Lilith or her family. I thought I didn't want to know, but she spoke anyway, her voice calm and measured. "Lilith and Derek have moved to Eastbourne," she said. "It's cheaper there. But Derek now has to commute nearly an hour each way for work." I gave a slow, silent nod. No judgment, no emotion. Just acceptance. "And Willow's staying in Hastings," she added. "She's renting a room with a friend near the harbor." Another nod from me. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I felt no need to gloat or regret, just a quiet recognition of how things had settled. They had moved on. And so had I. Ashley hesitated, then added softly, "They're still hoping you'll change your mind, especially Tamsin. She keeps saying you were always a fair, principled man." "Judgment doesn't exclude principle," I replied, gently but firmly. I didn't linger on the topic. I shifted the conversation to something lighter. But later, as I sat alone, her words echoed in my mind. I thought about the children, about the ripple effects of my decision. Yes, they had to leave their comfortable homes. They had to adjust to smaller spaces, tighter budgets, longer commutes. But were these true hardships? Millions live with far less and far worse, yet they carry on. And my children? They're young, healthy, employed. They still have each other. They'll survive, and if they don't, it won't be because of me. It will be by their own choices, their own decisions. That's a truth I've come to accept without guilt. Frank, my lawyer, called again this morning. Parker is trying again to challenge the sale. He's claiming I made some kind of verbal promise that I owe them something morally. Legally, Frank says it's nonsense. Still, it means another hearing next month. I'll attend, of course. I'll face them all, my grown children, in a courtroom under oath while they present their grievances, their accusations, their pleas, and I'll remain steady, not out of anger, not to punish them, but because I finally found something I'd lost along the way, my self-respect, and I intend to protect it. I drained the last of my tea and stood. The sun was climbing higher, and the garden was waiting. Today I plan to trim the hedge and plant a new row of clematis along the southern wall of the house. A peaceful task. A rewarding one. Margaret Thatcher, no, not that one. Our Margaret from the village was stopping by later to show me her latest watercolor sketches. In the evening, I had a gardening club meeting. I'd promised to share my tips for growing. Roses by the sea. A full day. A rich life. One free of bitterness and the weight of old wounds. I took up my garden shears and smiled, remembering Derek's sarcastic remark from long ago. You look like a gardener. Well, yes, I do now. And I'm proud of it. After the hedge was done, I moved to the clematis. I dug neat holes in the earth, enriched them with compost, gently settled the roots, and pressed the soil back into place. There was a purity to this kind of labor, a quiet satisfaction I never felt sitting behind the principal's desk. In education, you plant knowledge, values, beliefs, but you never know if they'll take root. Sometimes you water them for years, only to find they've withered without care. My children, I suppose, were such a garden. I'd tried to instill respect, gratitude, empathy. But after Miriam's death, those virtues seemed to vanish from their hearts. Once the planting was finished, I put the tools away, took a shower, changed into a clean shirt and linen trousers, and prepared a simple lunch, a crisp salad of vegetables from the local farm, and a slice of Dorothy's homemade bread she'd brought by last evening. I ate on the terrace, watching the sea stretch into the horizon. There's a stillness here I never had in Hastings. The big house in its stately neighborhood had no soul, no sense of openness. Here I could breathe. That afternoon, Margaret arrived with a folder tucked under her arm. We sat in the living room, sipping tea, flipping through her artwork, soft seascapes, images of the village square, portraits of our neighbors. Then, to my surprise, I saw my own face. A watercolor of me in the garden, surrounded by roses, lost in thought. Did you paint this? I asked, stunned. Last week, she replied with a warm smile. I stopped by to pick up rose cuttings. You were so focused on pruning that you didn't even notice I made a few sketches. I studied the painting. Is that really how I look? Yes, she said. Peaceful, content, nothing like when you first moved in. And how was I? Then, I asked. She paused. You looked tired, as if you were bracing for another blow. Forgive me if that sounds harsh. No, I said. It's true. I was running from something, but not anymore. She offered the portrait to me, a belated housewarming gift. I accepted it with gratitude. I won't hang it on the wall. It feels too self-congratulatory, but I'll keep it on my shelf. A quiet reminder of how far I've come. That evening at the gardening club, 8 of us gathered in the small community hall. We sipped tea, nibbled biscuits, discussed pest control and fertilizer ratios. Mr. Finch. Our chair insisted I enter my roses in the county's flower show. You've got talent, Mr. Boft, he said, beaming. Healthy roses like that, in this salty air? Impressive. Just lucky with the soil, I mumbled. Don't be modest, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. You've worked hard, a real professional, real professional. The words hit me softly, like a balm. Once, I was mocked for looking like a gardener. At Willow's birthday, they laughed at me, as though I had fallen from grace. But now, I'm respected for it. Honored for a doubt. Funny how fate works. At 78, I've started over. New friends, a new calling, a new way of living. And more importantly, a new way of valuing myself not through job titles or the approval of ungrateful children, but through the work of my hands and the joy it brings. When I returned home, I checked the mailbox. A letter, handwritten. From Tamsin. I opened it slowly, breath held. It was brief. He and Parker are moving. Tamsin's taken a job in Manchester. He asked for my address to keep in touch. Orson is graduating from university. Marion is seeing someone kind. No apologies. No accusations. Just a few lines of distant peace. I tucked the letter away. I didn't know what to feel. A strange mix of sadness, relief, and something else. Acceptance, perhaps. I'd reply tomorrow. Tonight, I needed silence. I stepped onto the terrace. The stars had emerged, brilliant against the dark sky. The sea whispered gently beyond the cliffs. And I thought of Miriam. She loved the night sky. She would sit out for hours, naming constellations, telling me stories of the stars. Would you have approved, Miriam? I whispered to the heavens. Would you understand why I did what I did? No answer came. Only the soft hush of the surf and a distant cry of a seabird. But something inside me stirred. A quiet knowing. She would have understood. She always valued self-respect. She would have mourned how our children treated me. But she would have stood beside me in this. I returned inside, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed. Tomorrow I'd finish the clematis. Walk with Eleanor by the sea. Visit the library. A small life, yes, but mine. Fully mine. And as I drifted into sleep, I thought of all those years I wasted, years spent trying to earn love from people who had none to give. All the humiliation. All the loneliness. Now, I am free. Not just from them, but from the illusions I clung to. I am not a former principal, not just a father, not an old man waiting by the phone. I am Eustace Boft, a man who found peace and purpose at 78, a man who respects himself, and at last that is enough. The end.